when we look to submit our opponents, there is a common adage that people use. It would be position before submission. It's relatively useful to get the basic student to understand the idea that submissions are not often readily available with no setup. Okay, it's very rare that you just get to jump into an armbar or a leg lock or really anything just from an open situation where no jiu-jitsu is happening and all of a sudden we're in a submission that's going to be successful. And it helps, I think, initially prevent students from moving into submission holds that aren't really there and having the opponent pull out and then having the opponent capitalize by either gaining positional advantage or maybe taking your back, maybe putting you in a submission hold or whatever the case may be. So I think it's meant to make students more mindful of the idea of trying to find some way to position themselves properly before they go after a particular submission hold. Now, I would prefer to revise that statement, and I'm sure John has probably made mention of this as well in many of his DVDs. I would like to revise that statement to control before submission, okay? Because I think what people start to get in their head when you talk about position before submission is, well, I've got to pin somebody inside control before I go for a submission. That's not true, okay? I don't have to pass someone's guard before I go for a submission. It might help certain submissions. It certainly exposes certain submissions, just the same way that taking the back might expose certain submissions. But I don't have to achieve a full crossbody pin or a mount or a back mount in order to try to submit my opponent. And it's a very short-sighted way, as you guys progress through this martial art, to look at the idea of submitting the opponent. What you do have to do is effectively control your opponent before the submission. So let's talk about some of the fundamentals of control of one of our vehicles for our weapons, okay? One of our leg entanglements, which is standard or a Rimi Ashigarami, okay? Which means like beginning Ashigarami, I believe. Okay, Ashigarami meaning leg entanglement. Okay, so in a situation where I establish an Ashigarami, let's talk first again a little bit about the specifics of the position. My training partner's leg crosses the plane of my hip. My heel covers my training partner's hip. My knee covers my own heel. Okay, and my foot covers my training partner's far hamstring. Okay, now I went into a brief overview of some leg entanglements and some mechanics of submissions before, and I didn't talk too specifically about what we're trying to do here, okay? I made mention of the fact that this is often in a preliminary situation that we use to expose various submissions, okay? I didn't get into the nitty-gritty detail of exactly where you want your legs positioned and why you position them that way, okay? Now we're gonna start to do that. So, first things first, this heel that's covering my opponent's hip, okay? It's functioning in a few different ways. Okay, one, it holds my opponent's hip down, all right, in the event that I'm trying to go for some sort of a submission hold, okay? So let's say I'm going for an Achilles lock or heel hook or whatever the case may be. I'm able to pin my training partner and wedge his hips down, okay, with something. It's not a great wedge. It's what we would refer to as an open wedge, okay? If my training partner decides to knock that off, he can at any moment, okay? Closed wedge would be if my legs were locked around my training partner's hip in a outside Ashigarami, okay? We can reinforce that open wedge, okay, by placing our knee against our own heel here. So the heel is pulling into my training partner's hamstring, and the knee functions to kind of close off some of the space. I wouldn't refer to it quite as a full a closed wedge. Technically, there's a connection here, okay, but because there's not an actual lock that keeps the legs connected, I would still refer to it as an open wedge, okay, even though my knee is going to try to close off some of the space in this wedge, okay? My training partner can still, with a very minimal effort, kind of separate, dig, and eventually pull my heel off here to start disassembling this Ashigarami, okay? But it does a much better job than if my knee is just placed anywhere, okay? I want to cover that open space. Finally, the placement of this foot is going to be underneath my training partner's far hamstring. That's very relevant. Some people will lock up a Rimi Ashigarami and the foot ends up on the same leg that they already have control over, okay? This is in general a mistake. There are times when we might use this foot for this purpose, but for the most part, when we're doing a Rimi Ashigarami, this isn't helpful. Why isn't it helpful? Let's talk about what this foot does and how it functions. Right now, while my training partner is sitting on his butt, okay, this foot mainly functions on the far hamstring to start trying to prevent my training partner from completely spinning away from me, okay? It allows me to control the rotation of my training partner's hips in a more manageable way. When I just control one leg like so, if my training partner starts rolling and turning, or he has a lot of ability to pull his legs out and spin. Go back. When my foot comes underneath his thigh, it slows him down a considerable degree. When my training partner goes to turn, he's got to unentangle the foot from the thigh before he can even begin the turn. Okay? So it places one step between my training partner and a potential defense to a movement. Yes, in a Rimi Ashigarami, I want a little bit of a turn to get a hold of my training partner's heel. But what I don't want is a situation where my training partner wildly turns and kicks away from me. And these toes against my training partner's hamstring help prevent that. Okay? Now, so far, we only have a one-dimensional approach to what we're doing in Ashigarami. Okay? What I mean is we're only talking about a situation where my ass is on the floor and his ass is on the floor. Okay? But there are other situations, other iterations in which I can control my opponent in Ashigarami that are relevant to discuss. For example, if my training partner stands up. Let's rotate. So, the Ashigarami is the same, but there are extra parts about this, about the fundamentals of control that we need to remember. Okay? If I place my feet in position in an Ashigarami, yes, I did mention I want the knee to cover the heel. We'll get to that in a second. Okay? It's pretty inadequate when I'm in this situation. When we're on our ass, okay, all I really got to do is scoot close to my training partner. Here, I have to fight against gravity to reach the opponent. So I now have to actually apply force consistently over time of my pelvis towards the ceiling. Why do I have to do that? Okay? What does that add to this movement? Okay? Couple things. One, I mentioned before, it helps me cover this heel connection that I have here. So when my training partner goes peeling my feet out, it's not just the easiest thing in the world. Okay? Boom. Glued, and we're controlled. Second thing, and this is probably the most important thing, it puts weight on my opponent. Okay? If my opponent doesn't feel the weight of my legs, there's very little control from here. It's incredibly easy for my training partner to kick legs out. Okay? It's incredibly easy for my training partner to just push my legs down. Okay? If I wanted to expose a heel, I have very little ability to do so. Okay? It renders my Ashigarami basically useless. So, my pelvis pushes up towards the ceiling, and my heel is going to do something we refer to as a back heel. Okay? That's basically when my heel comes towards my butt or towards my hamstring and pulls in with the hamstring. You see there's activation in the hamstring like so. Okay? That allows me to lift my hips up towards the ceiling. Finally, this foot comes into my training partner's far thigh. Now it performs an additional function to when we were just flat on the floor. Okay? Yes, if my training partner were to rotate in this situation, it can slow him down, this far thigh control. But in addition to that, it allows me to control two legs in a meaningful enough way that I might be able to sit my training partner's ass to the floor, even without grabbing my training partner's far foot with this hand. This makes it even easier. But because I have this foot behind the far thigh, I might be able to knock this guy down without even touching his other leg. Okay? Again, only if my hips are up off the floor and he has to feel my weight. Okay? And I'm back heeling nice and strong. And this foot catches the far thigh. If I go around the same side thigh as I try to knock my opponent over, he'll always be able to walk that leg in a circle. And I won't have any real ability to catch my training partner off balance, knock him over, stop him from wildly spinning. Go ahead, just turn very quickly and kicking out. I don't really have much ability to stop him from doing that. Okay? So when my training partner stands above me, we have the added element of a raised pelvis and a strong back heel. Okay? And again, for even additional reasons, making sure that this foot controls my training partner's far hamstring. Okay? Now, one good drill to help you guys practice, all right, getting into this situation, okay, would be establishing an Ashigarami. Your training partner throwing your feet off, okay? as your training partner throws your feet off, you always want to try to maintain one leg in the center. What I never want to see happen is my training partner throw a foot off, have both feet drop, and now my training partner can just mount. Okay? And that's a big problem. It's embarrassing for everyone. Okay? As my training partner goes to do this, I keep one leg activated. Okay? Now, I'm just going to move to the other side and establish an Ashigarami on the other side. Let's rotate so you're facing the camera. Okay? A little bit more center. Yep. So that we're just switching like so. Always keeping a foot in the center. Okay? So we have a leg in the center. At any given point in time, he goes to sit down. No problem. I can always reinitiate an Ashigarami. Okay? When we don't, we get mounted. Okay? Go back down to your butt. In a seated situation, drill would be as follows. Okay, my training partner starts trying to scoot away. And I can climb towards him, or my training partner starts to scoot away. Okay? And I can switch to the other side. And once again, reestablish that connection. My training partner separates the connection, takes my foot off, he starts scooting away. I either follow him, okay, or as he takes off the connection, he scoots away. I can even follow him and switch. And again, enter into a Rimi Ashigarami. So you have this idea of climbing and switching legs that have been integrated into our Ashigarami control that allows us to help maintain and control this connection between me and our training partner within a Rimi Ashigarami. What we're going to look to do now is use the elements of Kazushi or off balance to control my opponent. Often control is looked at in a very narrow-minded view, I think. I think control, when we think of control, we think of just being able to stop our opponent from moving altogether, okay? There is another form of control in which I am still able to dominate the opponent. I'm still able to maintain my my advantages while my opponent moves, or through movement even, I would say. Everything, I think early on in the sport, a lot of people get confused when they hear the term control, and they just think that they have to lay on somebody. I have to pin, I have to hold this person down. And yes, there are parts of this sport where that's very important. But I think you're missing something if you don't realize that through moving your opponent, you can control them as well. Okay? Sometimes even better than just trying to pin and hold your opponent. Specifically in instances where maybe, I can give you a brief example. If I pass someone's guard and I just try to squeeze from a side control situation, especially without the gi, that can be difficult to like pin and control somebody there. He's going to be moving around, twisting, turning, trying to get his knees in. And I could stay there and wait till he recovers. Or as he goes to try to get his knees in, I circle to the other side. And that's one way to control my opponent. Or as he turns away from me, I go to take his back. And it's still control. I'm not at a loss because I couldn't hold my opponent in side control. He might be 250 pounds and barrels out of side control. But if I change positions to the back, it's still positive, a net positive for me. So my training partner stands above me. Okay, and I get into an Ashigarami situation. Let's rotate. And I get into an Ashigarami situation or a Rimi Ashigarami situation. Okay, I talk about the ability to link my hips to my opponent's hips, pin and control with my legs, etc. Okay. While I'm doing this, like I mentioned, my training partner will always be trying to fight to peel my feet off to disestablish this connection. Okay. He's going to be repeatedly doing this all the time with all forms of Ashigarami. He'll be pushing, sliding legs off, etc. Okay? One of the reasons he's able to do that is because I'm not moving and he's not moving. Okay? If I just stay and hold here, he'll be able to repeatedly have two free hands to play with my feet and always be able to disassemble the Ashigarami. We saw one way to deal with that is potentially switching. Okay? Now, in that switch, I didn't really off-balance my training partner, the first drill that we did. He just peeled, and I just kind of replaced the knee and moved to the other side. It's good. It's a good drill. It helps control the opponent. It allows me to reestablish the connection on the other side. But my training partner's always still ready to receive me every time I switch. So when he pushes the feet off, he knows as I switch, the foot's about to come over the hip, and he blocks. And all of a sudden, we start to get into a situation where I can't link my feet into my opponent at all. And then he begins to push my knee down, possibly pass the guard into mount. We got a lot of problems here, okay? So instead, we're going to enact a secondary movement before I hit this switch, where I bump my opponent's hands to the mat. When my training partner goes to peel, I'm going to kick with this leg, and I'm going to reach out a hand to block my training partner's foot from stepping forward. All right, why? What I don't want to happen is to kick my training partner forward and then for him to take a step past me, okay? I want my training partner's foot to be met with a wedge and his hands to touch the floor, okay? So he can't base himself with his feet. He must base himself with his hands. So he peels the ashigarami. I kick. I push off the ground with this foot. As he peels, even before he finishes peeling, I take this foot off. I slam it to the ground. Notice this knee is still close to my chest, and I kick my training partner forward. Now, while my training partner is leaning forward like this, you don't have to fear getting mounted. Yes, I mentioned having a knee in the center. Is there a knee in the center right now? Not really, but try to mount me, Chris. It's a difficult thing. There's a lot of forward pressure. Even if he gets his two knees on the ground, it's no problem. I can turn to the outside and put a knee back to the center. Okay? So I push my training partner forward. Now, after my training partner's hands are on the mat, I can switch sides with ease. He has no ability to stop my feet from getting in place. So maybe my first ashigarami entrance, he blocked well. Go ahead, stay up. He blocked well. The second one, his hands are on the mat. Now I have a great opportunity to enter into my training partner, all right, with a strong Arimi ashigarami. Now that's one off balance. That's a forward off balance, knocking his hands towards the floor. That's one good way to do it. Okay, another good way to do it is a backward off balance. We kind of mentioned this in the last drill. Okay, two ways to do this. Controlling two legs, and that was controlling two legs with two hands, by the way. Okay, or controlling two legs with my feet. Okay, this leg is controlled with this foot, this leg is controlled with that foot. Okay, and I'll probably also, in addition to that, control this leg with this elbow. And then turn and knock my opponent over. Okay? And it's through these motions, the bumping forward, my training partner posturing, the kicking back, that I'm controlling my training partner. And what you notice is, yes, my opponent's moving. Yes, my training partner's responding. But I'm in control. I am the aggressor. I am the one on offense. Right? And these off balances often lead to greater offense than I would have had. Okay? For example, my training partner is standing above me and his feet are firmly planted on the floor. It's often hard to turn and expose my training partner's heel. Allow me to turn. This would be a desirable position for me, to expose a heel hook. But when he's tall and his feet are planted strongly on the floor, when I got to try to turn, it's tough. If I knock my training partner's hands to the floor, it's so much easier to start to turn and expose my training partner's heel now. Okay? He has so much less ability to keep his heel glued to the mat. Okay? Same thing goes, pop up. Maybe I'm having a trouble altogether exposing the heels from this position. So I drop his ass down to the floor. Now it's much easier. Okay? And I can get into my heel hook submissions, all right, while I'm down on the mat. I may realize that, hey, this standing opponent is very agile, very well balanced, very good at preventing me from being able to get heel exposure in the standing position. I got to put this guy down. All right? So those off balances help. In addition, we can start to work into a push-pull reaction on the part of my opponent. This is an advanced Kazushi principle. Okay? So I push my training partner forwards. Okay? And his reaction is to come back into an upright position. Where's the momentum of his body going? In a backward direction. I start by bringing him forwards. In order to recover from that forward off balance, he has to go back. So as he recovers, it makes it easier to knock my opponent back. As opposed to taking a standing opponent who's tall, strong, and well balanced, okay, and just trying to knock him back. He's able to balance himself. Okay? So I start with forward, then as he postures up, I end with back. And I'm able to knock someone down to the floor. Okay? And throughout this process, I'm able to control my training partner. Okay? Often I will say this, while you're playing these games with your training partner's balance, you will more than likely have to recover your ashigarami when their ass hits the floor. Okay? It's often not going to be an immediate heel hook. The first move I'm going to make, get close to my training partner, climb his leg a little bit. Then maybe we go after the heel hook. Okay? All right, I thought we'd spend a little bit of time now advancing our Kazushi game. So far, we have 2 directions of force to play with. We have forwards and backwards, okay? If you're going to be working at a high level in jiu-jitsu, at the bare minimum, you need 2 directions of force in any given off balance that you're going to do, okay? For example, my training partner's on his knees, okay? And I want to lift my training partner in the air for a butterfly guard sweep or an entry or something like that. If I just pull my training partner and he pulls away, I can't lift my opponent, right? If I just push and drive into my training partner, he drives into me. I can't move the opponent. So we have opposing forces meeting each other all the time, whether it be 2 pulls or 2 pushes, right? I need those 2 off balances, the push as my training partner pushes back into me, then a switch to the pull in order to get good work done, or vice versa. Okay, I pull and then a switch to the push in order to get good work done. Okay, the same way that we just did in the previous drill, where we went forwards, and then as he came back up, we went backwards. Okay, now that's good. Okay, but we can do better than that. Okay, often we have an ability to move my training partner laterally, or we have other ways to off balance my training partner. Okay, I want to be able to do this in different places and different directions to keep my training partner guessing. Okay. If I only have that forward and back, it becomes a little bit predictable to my training partner, okay? So what I'm going to start to do now is start messing with my training partner's far leg, not with my hands and not with the kick to the butt or anything like that, but with my 2 legs. One good thing about this Arimi Ashigarami situation is I already have this leg well controlled just with my arm, okay? Whether I overwrap with an Achilles lock or I shotgun grip by grabbing the back of the calf muscle, when he goes to kick out, I can do a pretty good job of attaching to my training partner, okay, with no ashigarami. So what I can then do is start playing with my 2 feet and placing them in different places to off-balance my training partner. So we move from the Arimi Ashigarami situation to various forms of X-guard, okay, where we can start off-balancing our training partner. Let's start by off-balancing my training partner in such a way that I drop him down to 1 knee. In this way, we reduce mobility, okay? Before, when we were playing forwards and back, at any given point in time, my training partner still has a great degree of mobility, okay? He can step around the mat, forwards, backwards, okay? He can move all over the place. When I chop my opponent down to a knee, I greatly reduce his options to be mobile from this position, okay? He can't really go too many places. He tries to run away. He's pinned down with my feet on top of his feet. He tries to push into me. He's kind of wedged with my knees. I could even take one of these feet off and put it on his hip. Okay, he's very well controlled in this situation. He's no longer on his feet. He's dropped down to a knee. So that's very helpful for me. Let's take a look how this off balance works. My training partner comes back up. Okay, I have 1 foot that was on a hamstring. It's going to slide down to his knee. The other foot is going to slide in front of my training partner's shin bone. Okay? Now, what most people would teach in this situation is just a push and a pull. I can't really do too much good work with that. Okay, why? There's a ton of weight on this foot. I need to take some of the weight off. So I'm going to lift with this foot and with this foot. A little lift. So now some of the weight is off the foot. As the weight comes off the foot, it's easy to sweep this ankle behind my training partner's butt. And I can drop my training partner down to the floor, okay? From this situation, like I mentioned, he's well controlled, okay? He had gotten immediate off balance. His hands are on the floor, so he can't use those. I have an exposed leg that I can attack, okay, right away. Okay, so this is a really good way to off balance my training partner and to get into some very good controlling Arimi Ashigarami attacks, okay? Let's look up again. Now, that would be a way in which I can off balance my training partner in a forward direction, yet take out a leg. I can do the same thing, but bring my training partner backwards. Instead of dropping my training partner to his knee, I can drop my training partner to his butt. All right, I do this by taking this foot that's on the hip, placing it across to my training partner's far hip, and taking this foot and sliding it underneath my training partner's ankle.
Okay? From this situation, the same story goes. If I just scissor my legs, which is what most people teach, I can't off-balance my training partner well enough. Okay? He maintains his base because the weight on this leg is very heavy. Okay? So I take some weight off of that leg. I put it and transfer it onto this leg. So I lift a little bit. As I lift a little bit, I then kick the legs in opposite directions. I pull that leg out from underneath my training partner, and now I've taken my training partner down. Whether I choose to use the Urimi Ashigarami now to submit my opponent, or whether I choose to get on top, or whatever the case may be, is going to be my choice. But once again, it's an effective way to continue to off-balance my training partner and control him from this position. Okay, let's look at that one more time. Okay, so we have a situation where our feet come off and we can go across the hip and under the ankle, and a situation where we can come, and that would drop my training partner backwards, and one where I can bring my training partner forwards and onto a knee. Okay, you can also do minor off balances just with a standard X guard. How does X guard differ? You wouldn't drop your leg all the way down to the ankle. I'm just going to take my knee from the X guard and knock my training partner's hands to the mat. Okay? This also allows you to make other transitions later on, like coming into scoop grips, etc., on your training partner's legs by putting your training partner's hands down on the mat. So he comes back up. So another off balance, we just get to a standard X guard. We bump this guy forward. Okay? So we have numerous ways of off balancing our training partner. All right, for success in a Urimi Ashigarami here.
So we saw some basic Kazushi, some more advanced Kazushi actions. And now this is another type of advanced Kazushi action, but more specifically related to tripod sweeping, because I find it to be a very versatile and effective way of off-balancing and knocking your training partner all the way down to his butt, to his back. And like I said, sometimes maybe you just get your training partner to post. And this is a very useful way to control people. Again, if your opponent is focused on catching his balance, he's posting his hands on the ground, he's getting knocked to his back, he's doing all of these things, he can't be employing offense on you. So while this is a leg locking DVD, and you might be wondering to yourself, it's like, yeah, man, I just want to break these guys and heel hooks, I want to rip them. You know, while you're thinking about all these things, it's like, these are the tools that are going to make you more effective at doing that. Okay, so I'm trying to build you up to a really high level of competency to be able to control and manipulate your training partner as you're trying to break them or before you're trying to break them. It's going to make it so much easier for you when you actually go to break somebody if you learn how to do this stuff. All right, because they're always going to be on defense, and when you finally employ that heel hook, they're not going to be ready for it. So my training partner stands above me. Okay. Now let's talk about some of these tripod sweep actions, okay? So everything starts from this Urimi Ashigarami, right? Okay, what's one of the main ways that my training partner is going to avoid this Urimi Ashigarami? Well, it's the back step, okay? My training partner will knock the foot off, and instead of trying to drive forward, he tries to drive backwards. Okay, yeah, it's fine. My training partner starts stepping backwards. In these situations, I'm going to place a foot on my training partner's hip and a foot behind my training partner's knee. Now, there's technically two ways to do this. Okay, you can capture the knee or you can capture the ankle. Both are acceptable. Both are good. Okay, one maximizes leverage. That's when I attack my training partner's ankle. It's the long end of the lever. We discussed that before. Okay, the other one maximizes the sticky foot principle. Okay, which is that anytime I want to become attached to my training partner, I'm going to curl my toes in to the best of my ability towards my shin and dorsiflex my ankle, like so. So I'm in a situation where when my training partner goes to try to step out of things, okay, big back step, I'm able to stay attached and follow. And you can use this sticky foot principle in many different areas of the sport, but for right now, we're doing it from standing. Okay, often we use it during sumigashi actions, etc. Okay, it's hard to maintain a sticky foot when we're down here by my training partner's heel. It doesn't work as effectively. The toes don't wrap around the same way. I don't get the same friction that I get up here at the knee. So when my training partner steps out, it's often much easier for him to avoid the off balance. Okay? So it's not to say that this shouldn't be used. It's just, they're just different methods of doing the move. There's advantages and disadvantages to both. Now, as far as the move itself is concerned, okay,
I'm going to apply some force to my training partner's hip with this foot, and I'm going to pull with this foot, whether it be at the ankle or whether it be at the knee, and I knock my training partner down to the mat, like so. Okay? Now there's one other critical element of this sweep that's very important. You position yourself a little bit away from me. Technically, I could do this sweep from a distance away from my training partner, but now I've enabled a special type of defense that makes it difficult for me to finish this move. Okay? We talked a lot about this leg and how my training partner can backstep with that leg. Go ahead. But what we haven't talked about is my training partner's ability to backstep in defensively with this leg. So as I go to off balance, because there's so much space that is generated between me and my opponent, he can actually backstep with this leg. And now, not only do I not get the sweep, I have no entanglement with my hands on my training partner anymore. I don't have control with my hands. Okay? When I lose control with the hands, bad things start happening. My training partner is able to grab feet, throw my feet around in different directions, and start enabling guard passes. While I still have hands on my opponent, it's hard for my training partner to throw two knees towards one side. And really, I'm in pretty good shape. So, how do we prevent this, and how do we make it easier to knock my training partner down? Okay? As I go into my tripod sweep actions, what I try to do, let's rotate so they can see this. Nope. Right there. What I try to do is, as much as possible, I either move myself closer to my training partner's leg, or I move my training partner's leg closer to me, and I attach it to my body. So now I've wedged my training partner's legs on multiple parts of my body. Instead of, pull the leg away, instead of just holding with my hand, okay, it's pinned against my buttocks. So when he goes to try to backstep with this leg, he's not going anywhere. And often that backstep, go ahead, leads into my training partner's fall. Now, once again, we can capitalize through the use of switching to the opposite side ashigarami, staying on the same ashigarami and climbing. Anytime you knock someone down, you're probably going to want to chase, all right, get closer to them and re-engage for whatever attack or control you're looking for. Okay? So, once again, I'm getting into my ashigarami situation. I feel him start backstepping. Okay, peeling feet off. Go ahead. Okay. I place a foot against the hip, a foot against the knee or the ankle, and maybe I move my butt close. Push, pull, and knock my training partner down to the floor. Now, there will be times when, despite my best efforts, my training partner will step this leg back. No problem. We go right to the other side, and we tripod on the other side. Okay? So again, we enact the method of switching legs. Okay? Now, let's say we're having a lot of trouble with this back step. Okay? My training partner's backstepping this leg a lot, and I'm having a tough time getting the connection that I'm looking for. Okay? Often this leg gets kind of far away. Okay? Another option here is to switch feet so we can reach farther. Right now, it's hard for me to reach. I place a foot on this hip. I place a foot on this ankle. And often when I perform this sweep, I like to use and engage this hand against the inside of my training partner's knee. I knock my training partner down. One thing to mention, just recognize your foot has crossed the plane of your training partner's hip, which means there's back exposure. Go ahead. So, if you don't want there to be back exposure off of the sweep, make sure you tuck your foot back to the inside and re-engage in that Arimi Ashigarami. Okay? If you're not worried about it, and you're going to go into some form of leg attack later on, no problem. Okay? But if you want to stay in Arimi Ashigarami territory, you want to stay protected from the back attacks, all right, we put our feet back to the inside. Okay? Once again, we have our basic tripods, either at the knee or the heel. Okay? If our training partner steps out on the hand-dominant side, we have an ability to pull and switch sides. If our opponent steps out, let's come towards me, on the leg-dominant side, the one where I'm trapping the leg, and he backs up a little bit, we often employ the action of switching feet and pushing with my hands to my training partner's knee to knock my training partner down. Okay? As I knock my training partner down, I have various options, whether it's coming up to attack my training partner or re-engaging, and then a Arimi Ashigarami action. Okay? So you're going to hear me refer to the word double trouble numerous times throughout this DVD. And I'm sure you've heard, if you've purchased any of the DVDs by myself, Gordon, John, Craig, I'm sure you've heard the term double trouble at least once throughout your learning. And this
typically refers to a situation in which you control two of your opponent's legs. It doesn't necessarily designate one particular position. It's pretty much just an idea that at given points in time, it's going to benefit us to control both of our opponent's legs. Sometimes it's used for the purposes of finding a submission. Sometimes it's used for the purposes of control. Sometimes it's used for the purposes of knocking an opponent down. Okay? I mentioned this in my Shoot to Kill DVD, where we talk about the principles of standing attacks into submissions, as getting a hold of two legs being the most off-balancing thing I can do to an opponent. So my training partner stands up, okay? And I can do a number of different things to try to put somebody down, and one of them is to grab one leg and try to put somebody down, okay? You're going to run into a hell of a lot of athletes that as you grab one leg and you try to put them down, no matter what way you try, they're just constantly bouncing up and down on their free leg, okay? And you cannot put them down. So what is the conventional wisdom there? We find a way to get to the second leg. Sometimes it's with my hand. Sometimes it might be with my foot, okay? There's a ton of different ways that we could go about doing it. We've done some of that thus far, okay, on the ground. We've talked about sweeping, and when we were sweeping, we typically involve control over two legs, okay? We haven't done too much with making sure that both hands get around our training partner's legs. We did one sweep with that, like that, but I want to discuss it as a general principle so you guys can get consistent knockdowns on your training partner and find two legs often, okay? Stand up. We want to make it a general goal to get two legs as often as possible because we know it's a very easy way to knock somebody down. To demonstrate how easy it is to knock someone down while controlling two legs with two hands, I can literally take my legs and put them in some of the stupidest positions possible and still knock people down, okay? I can do things that in theory make absolutely no sense and still knock a person to the floor, okay? Now, while I would not ever advise you guys to try to sweep somebody the ways that I just showed you, okay, it can be done, okay? And it's important to notice that, all right, because that just goes to show you just how powerful these sweeping positions are, okay? If you get a hold of two legs, like, man, you damn well better put this guy to the floor, okay? The only way that, somebody's really going to be able to stop this is if they're leaning completely forward, okay? Put your hands completely on the mat, even like almost walk away from me a little bit. All right, you got somebody in a position like this, yes, I'm no longer going to be able to knock them backwards even though I'm controlling two legs. However, because he's leaning so far forward, he's going to allow me any number of different entries into the legs from positions like this, okay? So if he's going to expect to do good work from here, he's going to have to be in a situation where he's going to be off balance by controlling two legs, okay? Let's talk about a couple of the ways that we can do this, okay? Starting with a Rimi Ashigarami, one way is to just control two of my training partner's legs with my feet on the inside, okay? I knock my training partner down by pushing it with my knees, okay? This gives me an ability to enter into a Rimi Ashigarami on either leg, and it keeps my feet safe. If my training partner wanted to attack my legs, he can't do it. If he wanted to try to pass my guard and sit up, he can't do it. I control both legs and my feet are on the inside. The only time my legs are vulnerable is when my feet are outside. Now my training partner can engage in his attacks. Okay? So this is one of the best ways to maintain control, keep myself safe, and knock my opponent down. Okay? Of course, like the first drill that we mentioned, I have an ability to knock my training partner forward, grab a hold of two legs, and sit my training partner down. That's the most basic form, all right, of double trouble in this Rimi Ashigarami situation. Okay? Another way that we can get a hold of our training partner's second leg, let's say his legs are more splayed apart. Okay? Now, when I bump forward, it's hard to reach this leg. Okay? So the idea of grabbing with two arms is starting to seem like it's not possible anymore. Okay? Instead, what I focus on doing is using the X guard action to procure my training partner's opposite side leg. I'm going to put my legs in the formation that we talked about before, where I put my foot underneath the knee and I put my foot in front of my training partner's shin. Now, instead of knocking my training partner down to a knee, so this is what we did last time. Come back up. I just lift and I pull my training partner's leg closer to me. From here, I grab my training partner's ankle, I go back into my Ashigarami, and I sit my training partner down to the floor. Okay? So, we're in a Rimi Ashigarami situation. The most basic knockdown, bump him forward, we got two legs. If that's not happening, he splays his legs out. Okay? We can go into an X guard. Now drop that X down. Okay?
a little lift and a pull towards me. If you're having trouble, you can always knock your training partner forward first to take weight off of the legs. If I go to yank here, I can't lift the leg, no problem. Go into your standard X guard, bump his hands to the mat. Now put your legs in place. All right, now, because there's weight on his hands, it's much easier to pull his leg in. As he goes to try to stand up now, good. I have both legs controlled. And I can sit my training partner down to the floor. Now there's other ways that I can reach my training partner's 2 legs. Okay, there's probably an infinite number of different ways that you can make that occur. Those are probably the most consistent and the most obvious ways to do it. But what's important to take out of this is not so much necessarily anything that I just showed you there, but just an emphasis on the idea that having 2 legs in both of your hands is a desirable thing, okay? Especially when your training partner's standing over you. All right, we're always able to drop our training partner down. And the other thing that it always enables us to do is now we have a selection of either leg to attack at any given point in time, okay? Anytime, take a seat on the floor. Any of those sweeps that we just talked about, when I land and I have 2 hands on my training partner's legs, now the attack, he never quite knows where I'm going to go. Even if I was already in an Orimi Ashigarami on this side, because I have this leg held with this hand, okay, as he goes to defend this Ashigarami, maybe he peels the foot off or whatever, I have no problem switching to this other leg. Okay, so it allows you to be more versatile in the direction of your attacks, okay, while also making it so much easier to knock your training partner down. So whenever you can find 2 legs, knock your training partner down.